All right, it looks like we've reached a couple minutes after the top of the hour. We are now recording. So if everyone would please keep your microphones muted, that would be very helpful for the recording. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Cybersecurity Awareness Month inspired presentation of cybersecurity best practices. My name is Chris Mallory. I'm the director of the Security, Cloud, and Infrastructure practice here at Ferrilli, and I'll be your host for today's presentation. Since this presentation is being recorded, for those of you who are unable to attend today, I would kindly ask that you keep your microphones muted throughout the presentation so that they can have a wonderful experience like you are. If you have any questions that you'd like to pose to the presenters, please ask it within the chat window. And each one will be addressed during the Q&A section toward the end of the presentation. Believe it or not, October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Since 2004, the President of the United States and Congress have declared October to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month, helping individuals protect themselves against online threats to technology and confidential data as those threats become more common. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance, NCA, lead this collaborative effort between government and industry to raise cybersecurity awareness nationally and internationally. This year's campaign is See Yourself in Cyber. This demonstrates that while cybersecurity may seem like a complex subject, ultimately it's just about people. The month-long campaign focuses on the people part of cybersecurity, providing information and resources to help educate CISA partners and the public, that's you and me, and ensure that all individuals and organizations make smart decisions, whether that's on the job, whether that's at home or at school, or for those that wish to become future cybersecurity practitioners. CISA encourages each of us to engage in this campaign's efforts by creating our own cybersecurity awareness campaigns and sharing this messaging with your peers. If you didn't do so this year, you can sign your organization up next year to be a cybersecurity champion. CISA puts a tremendous amount of effort into making the process easy on you, and provides you with the presentation and marketing materials to promote National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. If you already have a security awareness program at your institution, this material could just be used to provide some fresh content. It could cover the month of October if you're on a monthly cadence. And just to make, and if you don't have a security awareness program already, then you could use this information to as part of an annual push for cybersecurity awareness. Now that we've covered the history and context of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our two presenters today. Brianne Chen-Sang and Lauren Armstrong are associate consultants working within the Security, Cloud, and Infrastructure team, and they support both Ferrilli internal and client-facing security initiatives. They're going to take you through some cybersecurity best practices that can be used within your personal life and on the job. The cybersecurity best practices we'll be covering today include the key National Cybersecurity Awareness Month topics and include a few others. The themes should sound familiar and include best practices around phishing awareness, password management, multi-factor authentication, safe computing practices, as well as data protection. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to Brianne to get us started.
Public Wi-Fi can be found just about anywhere, from coffee shops to hotels to airports. Being able to connect to these Wi-Fi networks when we're out and about is a convenience. However, we do still need to be cautious when deciding which networks to connect to, how to safely connect to them, and what we do while we're connected to them. When you connect to your public Wi-Fi, your information is sent out in clear text, which means that anyone else on that same network could see that information, such as passwords, banking information, addresses, etc. Sensitive information should never be sent anywhere while connected to public Wi-Fi for this reason. VPNs create encrypted tunnels between remote servers and devices, which provides both privacy and protection while using the internet. With a VPN, your information wouldn't be sent in clear text, making it much more difficult for a hacker to intercept and understand. When connected to a network that isn't your own, a VPN should always be used for your protection. Lastly, when not using Wi-Fi, you should disable it. This is because when your devices aren't connected to Wi-Fi, hackers can't use that connection to target your devices.
You can browse the web safely by following these tips. Keep your web browser updated. As soon as your web browser notifies you of an update, be sure to update it right away. These updates often include important security patches and fixes. Only navigate secure websites. Avoid sites that look suspicious and be mindful of security alerts from your web browser. In your settings, you can block websites as well as determine what information you're able to see and how much of your information is being shared. And this can be done under the privacy and security settings. For example, if you want your cookies automatically cleared once you exit your web browser, that is something that can be done from the browser's privacy and security settings. Cookies collect data by tracking all of your online activity, and that data is often shared with third parties unless you opt out or clear them. Only download files and apps from sources you trust. Sometimes even clicking on a link that looks safe or clicking a pop-up ad to close it out could put spyware or malicious content on your device. At this point, your computer would become infected and your personal information would be at risk. So having an ad blocker and following these other tips will limit your risk while online.
Phishing is a form of cyber attack that attempts to trick people into parting with something of value, such as money or personal information, through deceptive emails or other electronic communications. There are some key clues to look out for in order to spot a phishing email, and it's important to pay attention to them. Most phishing emails will lead to pages where entries for financial or personal information are required. Never make confidential entries through the links provided in emails, and never send an email with sensitive information to anyone unless you're 100% sure that it's safe to do so. For example, sending documents to your workplace through an encrypted email. Emails that were unexpected and are urging you to take action now are also suspicious, and you should not click any links or enter any personal information before verifying the authenticity of the sender. Opening and downloading random attachments are also not advised, as you could potentially be downloading malware or viruses. It's also important to note that secure websites always start with HTTPS, so make it a habit to check URLs before trusting them. And always ensure that you're taking the proper precautions within your organization and even personally to report phishing attempts. Most organizations have processes already defined to report phishing emails. If you're unsure about how to go about this at the workplace, ask the appropriate party at your organization. Most free email providers also have a way to report phishing emails. If you're unsure how to report phishing messages that you receive to your personal email account, please consult that provider's help section. Email is a convenient and common form of communication, and about 300 billion emails are being sent and received on a daily basis. This is why attackers often attempt to take advantage of users through email, and it's critical to implement some best practices to avoid becoming a victim. We just went over phishing, so I won't go too deep into it again, but it's important to stay updated on phishing tactics because new scams are always being created, and if you're not keeping up with them, you're making yourself more vulnerable. Again, think before you click and don't send personal information through email unless you're 100% sure it's safe to do so. Changing your email password routinely is also recommended because hackers may attempt to access the same account more than once, and if your passwords are always changing, hackers will find it harder to gain frequent access to your accounts. Lastly, don't access your email from public devices, such as hotel computers, as hackers can install keylogging programs which record user keystrokes. This gives them access to login credentials, as well as any other information that has been typed on that public device.
The stronger your password, the more protected your devices will be from hackers or malicious software. On most accounts and devices, you are required to have a password, and this becomes the first line of defense against intrusion. In the event that your account is breached, your personal data and any shared and sensitive documents are now at risk. And if you keep the same password for multiple accounts, the intruder could gain access to various accounts and even more information. This is why it's important to keep different passwords and also update them routinely to keep passwords up to standards and lower the probability of someone being able to guess it over time. If you're someone who has trouble remembering passwords, then you could benefit from a password manager. A password manager, for example, a LastPass, allows you to store passwords, documents, images, notes, and account logins into a vault for easy access. You can log into those accounts directly from the password manager and even generate secure passwords for those accounts. You only need to remember one password, and that will be paired with multi-factor authentication.
Multi-factor authentication is a layer of protection where a user is allowed access to a system or application only after providing 2 or more pieces of evidence indicating that they are who they say they are. There are 3 types of authentication factors: something you know, such as a PIN or password, something you have, such as a device or token code, and something you are, which would be something biometric, such as a fingerprint or Face ID. A very common type of MFA is using a password to log into an application, then being sent a code from that app as a second form of authentication. Multi-factor authentication is important to implement because even if one credential becomes compromised, anyone trying to log into your accounts will need that second authentication method to get in as well. This makes your data less enticing to hackers and will most likely encourage them to choose an easier target. Our smart devices do a lot for us, and they make it easy for us to connect to the world around us. Because they're capable of so much, we have to protect them in order to protect the information we have access to when we use them. The first line of defense when it comes to preventing unauthorized access of your devices is to use a passcode. Passcodes are usually a PIN number, a passphrase, or biometrics. It's also important to keep your device's operating systems updated, as usually these contain protection against glitches, bugs, and any other security flaws. Backing up your devices is also an essential part of keeping your data safe, as it ensures that your information is being held in a secondary location should loss or corruption occur on your main devices. Lastly, if your devices have the option to enable a Find My Device feature, you should do so. This will allow you to find your devices if they're lost and even erase them in some cases to prevent unauthorized access.
Encryption reduces the impact of theft. This is true for not only digital content, but physical as well. So don't leave passwords, sensitive documents, and devices unlocked or unattended. Keep them in a locked storage container and minimize external access. You might even invest in a security system for extra coverage and to detect any potential threats. The overall purpose of following security best practices is to protect your personal information. Keep attending security awareness seminars and webinars. Regularly monitor your accounts and activity, and most importantly, maintain privacy by being careful with what you share, because social engineering, such as phishing, is the most common attack vector, and millions of people lose their personal data to it every year.
For those of you who may want to read more on the subject of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, cybersecurity best practices, or who would be interested in the assessment and protection tools that are free for your organization to use, we provided some links here in the additional resources section. All right. That was short and sweet, but the material is the basics that we need to cover as organizations, as society, and it's a good reminder that sometimes we
think we lost Chris there for a second. Chris, do we have you?
We do.
Oh, you paused there when you were wrapping up.
Sorry about that, everyone. All right. Are there any questions that anyone has to ask of our presenters or myself? I don't see anything in chat. Can you confirm that, Jessica?
Nothing in chat so far.
All right.
Feel free to come off of mute. Yeah, I would say feel free to come off of mute if you prefer, or you can certainly use the chat box. We'll give it a few minutes here.
I see. All right. A couple of questions around password management utilities. The questions so far are, what program do you recommend for password crypt? I assume that is like the password vault. There are several great choices out there. Organizationally, we like and use LastPass, and there are many others like 1Password. You can even just Google a top 10 password management vaults, and they can give you the pros and cons of those. But my favorite is LastPass. It's my personal favorite. Ferrilli does not endorse or not endorse LastPass. How often should you change your passwords? That really depends on whether you're following the other password best practices, like not using the same password for multiple accounts. If you're already doing that, then the next question I would have back to you would be, what is it that you're protecting? And are you entering that password a lot? So, maybe a banking password, it might be a good idea to change more frequently, as often as 90 days in some cases is recommended. But again, you can lengthen that amount of time by making sure that you're using multi-factor authentication. And if you're using multi-factor authentication, you would probably become aware of someone who has your password. They try to sign in, but they don't get past the second factor, and you should become aware of that through security alerts on your banking website or your email and things of that nature. And if that's ever the case, then it's a great time to change your password. But generally speaking, I would say no more than, don't wait any more than a year. And sometimes that is even a long time. If you have something worth protecting, again, back to the banking reference, I would consider shortening that based on your risk appetite. What strategies do you recommend for training users for phishing defense? So there's a couple of ways that organizationally that you can tackle that. The first one is having formal and informal conversations about cybersecurity and the risks that are out there. Even just, perhaps as an IT leader or an executive, getting someone knowledgeable on the subject to speak to employee groups, even to students at student events, just to raise the awareness of what those risks are, and then follow that up with training, and that should say, all right, we know what the risks are. We're going to show you how to spot those risks and avoid avoid those pitfalls. But then kind of the third step to that is testing the users with simulated phishing emails. And that will tell you how effective your program is. So often if you were to engage with a third party for security awareness, they're usually coupled together, training and phishing simulations. And so what they like to do is take a baseline of how phish prone is your organization, and record that, and then do some training, and then measure again. And so the trick there is culturally, organizationally, you don't want the phishing simulations to come off to your users as IT is having fun with it or anything like that. It's a legitimate way to measure risk in an organization, and by we learn by failing. We learn through our mistakes, and it needs to be positioned in that way, and be supportive to the end user, so they don't feel failure. They feel like they're being empowered to spot cyber risks and cyber threats, and be able to report them to you. Someone suggested AXCrypt as a password management utility. Someone +1 for LastPass. Is it better to write down passwords or store passwords in something like LastPass? My recommendation is always going to be a real password vault. While most of the threats that we talk about today are those that come from far away from your organization. The people that are running ransomware gangs and cyber criminal organizations are probably not local residents of your town. And so their distance, the internet gives them the ability to try to take over your organizational assets, get at your data, things like that. And so for a risk like that, they're not coming to your office, but there are still other risks where writing down a password is not advisable, because your coworker or someone who happens to be in the office and can overlook something, look at your password on your desk. That's a separate set of risks, but it's still a risk. And so both of those can be mitigated by using a secure password management utility like LastPass or OnePass. All right. Are there any other questions? Thank you guys for the great questions. I appreciate the feedback. Does anybody have anything else they want to ask? And again, feel free to come off mute at this time in the presentation, if it'll be quicker than typing. Any recommendations for phishing simulation tools? There are plenty of them in the marketplace. SANS Security Awareness is one that has been top billed for a while. So has KnowBe4. And there are large players and small players in the industry, and I think that you should take a look at 2 or 3 of them and see which ones fit you organizationally, and also could fall within your budget. From a security awareness training perspective, even if you don't have the budget to do phishing simulations, you may be able to put together some training material on your own and present that in a way to your users to help. But in terms of phishing simulation tools, those are some big players. For those of you that already have and are already paying for the Microsoft 365 A5 licenses, that also comes with its own phishing simulation functionality. So you can look for that in the Security and Compliance Center. You can set up simulated phishing tests for your users and provide real-time feedback to those who may click on a link that they shouldn't have, and automatically assign some training to those folks to help them spot those things in the future. So you may already have a tool that you're not aware of, depending on your Microsoft licensing. And there's a recommendation for Barracuda as well. Jason, is that a recommendation for the phishing simulation tools? Awesome. Thank you, Jason. It was a recommendation for the phishing simulation tools. All right. Any other questions or recommendations? All right. If any more pop up after we move on from this slide, we can definitely come back and address those. So as you know, education institutions are being hit hard by cyber criminals. They view the education sector as a soft target. 74% of ransomware attacks, yes, 74% of ransomware attacks against higher ed are successful. While there are many improvements to be made as an industry, institutions that are impacted are victims of a crime, and we take that seriously here at Ferrilli. So we want you to know that as part of Ferrilli's Pledge 1% commitment, we donate 100 hours of security services to institutions that have fallen victim to a cyber attack. So if you are an institution that has fallen victim to a cyber attack, or know of one that has, please let them know about our Pledge 1% program. We would be happy to help them get back on their feet. You can stay tuned to the What's Happening page on the Ferrilli website for the latest news and upcoming sessions and webinars just like this. That's ferrilli.com/what's-happening. And thank you very much for attending today's cybersecurity presentation. We hope that you found the topic informative. The recording will be available within the next couple of days. So feel free to share the recording with anyone that you believe could benefit from this information. Those that signed up, or those that you just are aware of and could use a reminder for cybersecurity awareness. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a great day.